Hello, everyone. I'm Candid Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on CFL Talk, joining me is Jared Bapty. Many of you that follow what we do here on CFL Talk will remember Jared Bapty. Also does some stuff with our Leaf Talk show. Jared, welcome to the program.
Hey, Frank, I'm happy to be back on.
I appreciate you stepping in, and I called Jared and I said, Jared, how'd you like to be on the show? And then he said, yeah, I think I can work it. I said, I can tell you why. Because I need you, because David Morassutti, our regular guy that we've been using for the last few years, has been pretty dedicated to the CFL, sit with them at practices and also during the game, as I do with you, and as I did with you a few times, has come up with COVID. Very concerning. It's an emotional experience for him. I know, because I spoke to him on the telephone. I hope the best for him. His sister has it as well, as does his brother and his girlfriend's family. So quite the challenge, something that kind of kicks your footing a little bit. I'm a little, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little emotional about it. And I appreciate you being on. And the only reason I didn't tell you why I needed you first is because I didn't want you to feel as though you had to do it. I don't like that kind of entrapment kind of stuff. So I'm grateful that you were willing to come on here just for the sake of being on the show. So that I appreciate.
Well, and I know it's better to talk to someone than talk to yourself, right? So.
Well, especially me, because I don't know how you guys put up with it. So okay, let's get you caught up. You're new in this, so we can, you haven't been on for a while doing this. So let's start at the beginning. We missed a season. Tell me how you feel about that season and looking back at the missed season.
Well, I mean, I think we all know how it was pretty heavily mismanaged by everything just kind of getting pushed back, and there wasn't really a whole lot of communication with the Players Association on whether or not they were going to have a season, how it was being decided, how they were going to get players from the States to Canada safely, because they were all going to have to quarantine, of course. And then they finally canceled it in September, arguably when we were at one of our lowest points with cases. And I was pretty disappointed, and I don't really know what else to say other than that. But when you look at how Randy Ambrosie and, well, the whole league really has responded this year, and how they're saying we are playing no matter what, I think that's true. They need to play no matter what. I think if they have to do it in a bubble, they should, because 2 years without the CFL is going to be just devastating.
Not a good idea for the long-term health of the league.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, your definition, your description, and remember, Jared's doing this in hindsight. So whether it's beneficial or not beneficial, we can debate that. But the fact is, it's with hindsight, what it added up to, what that missing season added up to. And I agree with you. Unfortunately, there was also what I'll call the questionable decision of going in front of the government, the committee, to get money for the Canadian Football League alone. I felt at the time, I still feel he should have gone there with more parties that were involved, more directly involved. He did not, and that's okay. That was that decision. I'm just saying, in hindsight, for the sake of accuracy. So we knew that the season was done. So now we get to the point now where we go, okay, obviously the teams aren't going to do much, right? They're not going to do much, and nothing much is going to happen. We end up with guys that were free agents, signed a 1-year contract, and all of a sudden that 1-year contract evaporates because of the pandemic, right? So we had players who signed with teams who never had a chance to play for that team because that season was eliminated. So then they all got thrown into the kiddie pool again. And then we end up with a different scenario the following season. Every team, Jared, by my definition and by my view, has been far more active than last year. Some teams more than others. We can discuss that, but there was a seriousness from the beginning. For those of us here in Toronto, we could see it with the Argonauts. I mean, Hamilton was re-signing people left and right. So there were teams that weren't doing as much, but still, the activity was a little more at a fever pitch, right?
Yeah, every team was pretty aggressive with getting the players that they wanted. I think BC actually did a good job of adding some pieces to help out and maintain pieces. I mean, they maintained their top receiver, which was key for a guy like Mike Riley, who's sitting there going, all right, I've spent a year off now, and I'm still making a decent chunk of change, but I got to make sure that I live up to that now, because I just signed that contract and a year of that's gone. But
they re-upped him as well last year.
Yeah, they
reworked the contract.
And I like where players and teams were willing to work together to kind of make that work with the more expensive contracts. I believe Bo Levi also reworked his contract, right? So the top guys, not only do they want to be here, do they want to play for the teams they're signed to, but they're willing to help them out based on what we've seen throughout this pandemic and how the CFL has really been hurt by it. Which is encouraging to see. We've seen fans come together, and I still had my season's tickets for the Hamilton Tiger Cats last year, despite the fact that I knew that we weren't going to have a season. I still made sure that I had them because I still want to do my part to make sure that this league sticks around. And I think that's a true testament to just how dedicated players and fans alike are to the league. We've seen the dedication of specifically Bob Young for the caretaker, as he likes to call himself, for the Ticats, making sure that everything is in place for a successful Grey Cup in Hamilton to happen, regardless of whatever the season ends up looking like, because as far as we know, it's not going to start till August now. So everything's really been nice to see from the ground up around this league. And I'm sure we'll talk about what's going on with the whole XFL partnership, though, at some point.
Yeah, we can get into that too. And that's an interesting thing. And then and we can also talk about the LFA, which is the Mexican Football League.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's talk that the three of them might get together, and this will be like a NAFTA thing, right? That they'll be working out. But we'll talk about that too, I think. When we came back here to this new season, what led up to, the questioning has always been, and we don't have to dwell on this, but it really is about the fans. We haven't mentioned the fans and the need for the fans to be, deeply involved in what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the priorities should be going into this season is to really drum up interest in young people. There's a really unique opportunity here for the CFL. They've had a year off. They've had a year to evaluate, understand what's wrong with their current financial structure, how they can rework that. I think Ambrosi still needs to really sit down and figure that out, because it hasn't really seemed to have been a priority lately, and I think that needs to be the number one priority. I've always appreciated what he's been doing with the global initiative and getting all these other leagues around the world kind of involved and becoming pathways for other players to the CFL. But I think he really needs to reevaluate the financial situation at this moment in time. And then, yes, the second priority should be to figure out how to get young people interested in this league again, because it's been such a difficult thing to do, especially in cities like Toronto and Vancouver, to get young people involved. And so if you can create an ad campaign that appeals to young people, I mean, you know what? I saw at the end of the Leafs game on Saturday night on the CBC, they ran a new ad for the Tokyo Olympics, which I thought was really cool. It was half live action and half anime, because that's, of course, the famous style of cartoon in Japan is anime. And actually, they wouldn't be very happy with me that I called it a cartoon to begin with, because it's not technically. But I thought that was really cool. And a lot of my generation and younger really gravitate towards anime. You see it with the next gen games in the NHL, where they go to a lot of animation, a lot of flashy graphics and stuff that appeals to young people. So if the CFL can put together an ad campaign to gravitate in that kind of direction as we lead up to the summer, because it really needs to start about now. We're into May. The preseason will be starting in a few weeks, technically, if it were a regular season. So I think now in the next, over the next month, we need to see the CFL start to really push themselves as a product that's interesting to everyone.
It's really not a new situation. It has, you're sort of saying, let's pick up where we left off, and that is figuring out how we can bring in those new fans. Another example would be also the NFL uses the robots, kind of anime, kind of robots,
right,
to basically do the same thing for people that are trying to understand exactly what you were referring to. That's another example when you watch the NFL where they have, they have stuff that introduces and or attracts the attention of people who think differently than those that have been watching NFL football for 50 years. So yeah, you're right. And there has to be, in the case of the NFL, just like everybody else, you have to, it's an assembly line, right? It doesn't matter where you are today. What you do today affects where you're at tomorrow. So what you're talking about is basically, for the Canadian Football League, it would be a pilot program, a program that's developed with the specific interest in bringing in younger fans. Unfortunately, it's a difficult thing to figure out. It's a bit of a Rubik's Cube. The CFL has, unfortunately, every problem they have at its root is money. Like if we talk about advertising, do they have the money to advertise in a way that can create the kind of interest that you're referring to? When it comes to the players, and they pay the players, it always comes down to that, which is why I'm not saying that for a negative reason. I'm trying to help figure out and discuss here the importance of, like what you said earlier, and that is expanding the game. And Randy Ambrosie 2.0, Randy 2.0 is about bringing the world to the Canadian Football League. But I think what we're beginning to see now with what happened with the XFL is we're seeing that not only do you want to bring the world to the Canadian Football League, you want to bring the Canadian Football League to the world. It's not just one direction. It has to be multi-directional, right? So there has to be interest fostered in a lot of different places than just Canada, right? But having said that, I want to make sure I don't leave Canadians behind. We still have to work on, it's multilateral. It's not as simple as saying our only problem is not being seen in France. Same way, our only problem isn't being seen in Toronto. It's also in British Columbia. It's also, Saskatchewan's pretty, they even are having a few issues right now. What do we do to engage? What can the Canadian Football League do to engage anybody who possibly has a set of eyes or can hear? And, whatever way you bring in, the game or your entertainment, how can we accommodate those people? Jared, that seems to be the biggest thing that we need to find, and that is where can the Canadian Football League and the ways to bring people in, how we can match them up, right? Because to align them is the challenge, right?
Well, and I think there's a couple avenues that the CFL should explore. I think first of all, they need to turn to their broadcaster, TSN, and go, let's work together here, promote us, because I'm sure people will tell me, oh, but Jared, they show all of the CFL top 50 plays, top 10 Grey Cups, top 10 whatevers. And I go, yeah, but I turn those off because we've seen them before and I don't care anymore. It's always, plays from, I mean, I look at it and it's like, the 1937 Grey Cup, and I'm like, what, they had cameras back then? Probably not, but you get what I mean. It's there, they range from more recent stuff all the way down, and I'm not going to bash on celebrating your heritage and the greats of each era, but it's this whole world is a what have you done for me lately? And really, TSN has not done very much for the CFL lately.
You're talking about fresh,
Yeah.
making it fresh, right?
Yeah.
And there's a sense or a hint of staleness that doesn't sell the game, that needs to be revamped and or delivered in a way that attracts people's attention. And then, being totally honest, as you are, a lot of people that you want to come to the game, right? They look at it that way too. Yeah, well, okay, that looks great, but what do what makes me want to come there, that I have to choose between the CFL and another sport? There's a lot of competition for every entertainment dollar, especially in places like Toronto and the big cities, where a lot of things are happening all at once, and because of that, people have to make decisions and choices. As unfair as that probably is, it's one of the things that has to happen. I talk about sometimes about how do you campaign for children. The best way to campaign for children is to ensure that the ones that play the game know it's affordable to come to the game. Gary and I always have this conversation in lacrosse, and he always talks about, if you can get the kids to come, there's 2 more tickets probably that are coming, right? The parents or the parent, either way. So how do you convince children that football's a fun sport to watch? You don't have to sell it to the ones who play, but you have to figure out how to convince the ones that play to come, because a lot of those kinds of sports, I'll throw soccer in there, hockey, everything's about, it's part of your life. And now let's look at the people who do it best, because that's what it comes down to. It comes down to young hockey players dream about playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So what do? They dream about being there, and they try to follow and emulate the players that are getting there, right? And I think that's part of what you're talking about, is making it relevant to the audience that they're trying to get. They have, my age group's well covered in the Canadian Football League. Yours, not so much. Younger than you, very little. So yeah, that's what we're talking about.
They need to get it on here. This is where they have to get it. Computers, television, anybody my generation and younger, we don't have cable anymore. We can't afford it. So where does it go? It's got to get on our phones. So the CFL needs to look at, a TikTok account, an interesting YouTube channel. I'm pretty sure I'm subscribed to the CFL on YouTube, and
so am I.
I don't see very much happening. They've got to get out there on devices and demand attention, because right now, I mean, how often does the NFL post a video or a TikTok or something like that? Each NHL team I've seen, or a lot of them with good social media departments, have a TikTok. I follow the Maple Leafs on TikTok. and they post the funny trends and little cool snippet videos of, oh, here's Mitch Marner doing a nifty little dangle in practice on Tuesday afternoon, right? The CFL has to get out there in that way, and then people will start to go, oh, there's more than just the NFL, because right now that's all they see.
I'm hearing two things. First, I heard about, stuff that's been around for a while, which is not, it doesn't attract people that
No,
much.
it's always good to celebrate, but it doesn't attract new people, right?
And then I'm hearing about new ideas, new views of the game, if you will. So how do you generate, the CFL needs to generate, new stuff that nobody's seen before, not just for the people that aren't following directly, but also for those that do, and everybody's always reviewing their finances, reviewing where they have their money. So even though you sold tickets to somebody one year, doesn't mean you're going to sell them to them the next year. So a lot of what you're talking about, and what I believe in, a lot of this new age thinking and trying to freshen up the Canadian Football League's view in people's eyes, is because you have to keep reselling the game to the people that you have already. Because a lot of the concern always comes in the Canadian Football League. Historically, we've experienced, and this is the danger of the pandemic and us coming back and seeing if the fans all come back. Do some of them come back? Are there those that aren't going to come back, that'll never come back again? That's what the league has to protect against as well. So it's not just a question of bringing in new fans. It's about keeping the old fans too. So the plan of attack for doing that, it might be just the one thing that you were talking, for example, TikTok. It's not my cup of tea, but TikTok can help keep the people who are there already and introduce new people. So the whole point of what we're talking about here, and I think what the challenge that the league has is how to maintain the level of interested people and also add to it. You sometimes you also worry, Jared, when you start focusing on one, you lose the other. So the challenge as well is to keep the interest of both, because those that you have already you need to keep, and those that you want you have to find, and so that's why the promotion part's very important.
Well, and I think there's some markets that you're basically going to be okay to kind of just say they'll all come back. I mean, Hamilton's one of them. I would say Saskatchewan's another one where you're pretty much guaranteed that those people are going to come back in some capacity, based on their personal finances, whether or not they can afford seasons tickets or whatever. They'll likely figure it out because that team means so much to those markets. I would even potentially throw Ottawa and maybe Montreal in there. The Montreal does love their Alouettes, and I think the Red Blacks coming back to Ottawa, having a team in Ottawa again, has really rekindled Ottawa's love for football. The CFL really needs to focus, I think, on the big four cities in Canada, and that's
Absolutely.
Toronto, Vancouver, and then Edmonton and Calgary have been a little bit worrisome in the last few years, right? As far as attendance, it's been going down. McMahon Stadium isn't fully packed anymore. So they need to figure out how to get the big four back on the map, because there's so much pulling for your attention in those big four cities, especially Toronto. And yeah, you talk about finances. I know for me, I've cut a couple of things in my life because I go, okay, do I really need this right now? Can I leave it and then maybe come back to it, or maybe not, right? And some people are going to sit there, especially in Toronto. People are going to sit there and go, okay, well, I have seasons tickets to, let's just say the Marlies. Well, they're already playing and they're already back. So I'm probably going to stick with them because the CFL is still, who knows, right? Even though, and they might be a diehard Argos fan, But because of the finances, they go, well, the Marlies are probably going to be back sooner, and it's something to do in the winter, and whatever, just based on certain factors, right? So
A big factor would be, for example, I'm going to use an example right now. A couple, actually. When the Toronto Raptors made their charge and won their first NBA title, more people wanted to go to the games. Not only, when people pay attention to something because it's, when the Raptors, because they were on a roll and going, marching to the championship, people were following them,
Mhm.
and sometimes physically, not just on the TV, not just on their telephone, but actually going to the game, not necessarily inside the game, but even outside, right? We had lots of people. When they won the championship, a lot of people went to Toronto. They bring their wallets with them. So when they go to things like that, they spend money while they're there. That's money they might have spent somewhere else. So now I give you another example with the Leafs having the success that they have. God forbid the Canadian Football League, especially in Toronto, and so even some Hamilton fans are big Leaf fans. You know what I mean? And so with the success of the Toronto Maple Leafs, how much, if they actually have success, I'm not predicting a Stanley Cup by any stretch, but what I'm saying is, if they have an extended stay in the playoffs, one that would, even winning one series would be,
Wouldn't that be nice?
more than normal. So, people are going to do what it takes to be close to that. And when they go close to that, their wallets come with them.
Mhm.
And when they go home, they don't come back with as much money in their wallet that they had last time. For example, they buy a Leaf shirt. Raptor shirts went crazy when they reached that. Remember? So,
Yep.
people start spending money. And this is the biggest challenge with the Canadian Football League, is that, there are so many ways for Torontonians to spend money just in sports. I'm not talking, I'm not even touching on everything else that Torontonians can do. So, yeah. And also the fact that people, well, I'll let you talk about that, then I'll bring the next point in.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's the theater scene, there's movies, there's so much in Toronto, right? So, yeah, I guess just to wrap that whole kind of discussion up, the CFL has a unique opportunity here to really push themselves. I think a lot of sports have this a unique opportunity that wasn't really taken last year. My experience with sailing as well was kind of the same, where people were looking for something to do outside in the summer because we weren't allowed to do most things. And the opportunity wasn't taken to really push a sport like that. And so I think that if the CFL doesn't take this opportunity to really uniquely push their own product, uh, it would be a big loss. And I think we'll see that not only with finances, but with future endeavors, as far as like potential TV rights and other things like that, if the CFL doesn't really push themselves right now.
And there is an opportunity. You've used that word. I'm going to use it as well. And I'm going to give an example of the opportunity they have in the grand scheme of things, because timing is everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the timing right now is they're getting approvals. Alberta not as yet. Ontario has. We'll see who else approves the Canadian Football League being in existence. The disadvantage they had was that they had half their teams were American, and they were coming from the US, and they weren't, we had problems with people coming from the US.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're all getting vaccinated in the US. Now we have an opportunity, because if we in Canada can straighten things out, bringing in these players, the majority of them are going to be vaccinated when they come here, by virtue of, now it's, if you're 16, you get vaccinated in the US. You can get vaccinated.
Yeah,
In
doesn't
fact,
matter.
we've seen it with the Leafs now. The Leafs are all getting the opportunity to be vaccinated. Yes, it will not be done at the regular places. They're worried about the distraction created by the Leafs being at a vaccine center. People going to get their arms and all of a sudden see a leaf, and it just You can imagine the scenarios of problems.
Matthews, go!
What is what the problems that'll exist? Yeah.
Pandemonium.
So the point I'd like to make is that this is the CFL has the opportunity to be the first league to have actually Canadians at the game, Canadian fans at the game. We know what's going on in baseball in the U.S. We know what's going on in the NFL in the U.S., but we also know what's going on in Canada. Nobody's going to the games, and the teams that are playing, for example, the Raptors. I know they're about to end. I get that, and even the Leafs, they're going into the playoffs. They don't have fans coming to the games. The CFL has an opportunity to say, hey, let's let people know, come watch the game live. They've got to promote the fact that people can come to the games, something they haven't been able to do. The CFL is going to get a chance to be the first league to be able to have people come to watch games, Jared. And I can tell you, you and I both know how valuable an asset that opportunity is, and that the CFL should make sure they lick the bowl on making sure everybody knows that they can come and they can watch the game if that happens. Because right now, other than baseball and the MLS, that's it. And the MLS is committed to being, elsewhere, not here, right? I'm sure they can change it, but you get what I'm saying.
Right. And, they need to take notes from what they're doing in the States, measure it against where we are in our vaccination plan and our rollout. And I think BC is also hasn't approved the return to play yet. I think I just saw an article for that. So, you really need to be transparent with what you want to do, and then how you're going to do it, how each team's going to implement it, because BC places indoors, right? It's not outdoors technically. So that's a different story there. Whereas every other stadium is outdoors, right? So there's a slight niggle as far as BC goes. But as long as it's done safely and it's done properly, and we're in a good place with our rollout and everything to do with that, yes.
Yeah, no. The interest in opening things up for everybody is higher. We're all frustrated and tired of lockdowns, tired of not seeing people, tired of not spending time with people that we are accustomed to before the pandemic, spending time with, doing things that we used to do that we can't do as yet. Everybody's getting tired of it, and I don't blame them. People are being referred to as anti this, anti that, whether it's anti-mask act, anti-vaccine, anti-lockdown. The reason is everybody's sick and tired of not being able to do what they used to do. So hopefully they'll be able to work that out. But the important thing is, whatever gets the fans to the games, all the better. There's things that can be done. You mentioned BC, Toronto, the same. There are a lot of empty seats in both those stadiums. So a lot of those empty seats can be filled by people who are, season ticket holders, or people who are scheduled to go to those games, right? Or people who buy tickets. I know it's a terrible thing to say, because I hear, Ticat fans and the rest of the people who hate Toronto talking about, well, we have in Toronto more room for fans. Literally, we could have social distanced last year at BMO, if you follow what I'm saying.
Really,
right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I know it sounds terrible, but I mean it in a sense that the challenge for Toronto would be far less in socially distancing, if that's required, if they're to maintain the same level of fans, right? And if there wasn't some mad rush, and then if we factor it, whatever, there's the opportunity for all the season ticket holders that are with the Argos to get a chance to go to the game. The challenge is places like Saskatchewan, Hamilton, where you're full, you're a sellout. Those places are going to be a little more difficult. Edmonton has a lot of people at the games, but they can fit one Heck, I think it's like 60 or seventy
Yeah, I
thousand
think
people, right?
it's 60 odd
Yeah,
thousand.
they can fit there. So if they only have 20, that social distancing again can happen, and you can still fill the stadium. Well, not fill the same, fill the void, or the amount of people that want to watch the game. So there's that stuff. But my biggest thing that I have that for the CFL to grow and to really make headway is I think that the TSN and the CFL have to have a serious conversation in allowing other like Sportsnet to broadcast the games. And my logic isn't because I don't like TSN. It's not because I don't think TSN does a great job. I think they do. But I do think competition breeds success. The success I'm talking about is maybe TSN isn't doing enough to show the game in a way that makes people want to go see it. Maybe they don't reach everybody that watches sports. So the landscape that TSN is shopping in on behalf of the Canadian Football League isn't a full landscape. I really truly believe that if Sportsnet was involved in some capacity, they would make each other better. Sportsnet would make TSN better. They would do things that otherwise they don't feel they need to do, and they wouldn't try things as much because competition is the greatest thing that's lacking in the Canadian Football League. Even the National Hockey League has come to realize that selling to one group, whether it be in the US, they've discovered we need to have more people involved, more stations involved, because quite frankly, it's the way that they can, breed some competition, not of just selling advertising, but interesting fans. To me, that's the key. That's the part that I find needs to be fostered a little more. Maybe people think I just have something against TSN. I truly don't.
Well, I'll do you one better. And again, I quite like TSN. I think they've done a wonderful job. But there was a time, and it was around the time when TSN first acquired the CFL, where you had to get a special cable package to get TSN or to get all of TSN, right?
Right.
And I think that unintentionally may have hurt the CFL a little bit because it wasn't being shown to everyone always like it was on the CBC. So I wonder, because of the way Sportsnet is structured, where sometimes you turn it on and it's the same program on all 5 channels.
Yes.
I wonder if the TSN should reach out to the CBC and say, you guys broadcast to everyone all the time. You've got multiple networks because they have CBC News Network and their regular programming. Maybe you do a game of the week on the CBC or something like that, like you do with Hockey Night in Canada, right? Every Saturday night, it's usually the Leafs, and people outside of the Toronto area probably have issues with that. But if you did a game of the week on CBC, every the Sunday afternoon game that was a highlight for the CFL.
Don't stop there,
summer,
Jared. You're on
right?
you're on a good point. Don't stop there. They can simulcast just like when you watch a Leaf game or a Montreal game. You can watch on Sportsnet and CBC. I'm sorry, carry on, because your idea is very good. And I would also throw in there the little tidbit that this is a summer sport and a lot of people go to cottages, trailers, and such. And I believe they've lost a lot of fans because of that. Because unfortunately, the sports networks, they're harder to get at the cottage. Yes, you can get satellite like Bell, but there are some issues with that. Some people don't want to have that when they have Rogers at home. They don't want to pay for both, if you follow what I'm saying.
Right. Whereas if it's on CBC, the CBC streams it.
Over air. So you can do it both ways. Yeah, they stream it, and absolutely.
And the other thing is that I have nothing against Rod Black. I think he's wonderful. I think Rod Smith is going to be fantastic as he continues. And then there's the other guy as well, whose name I forget at the moment. The newer guy, the younger guy who started calling games as well. but the CFL is really going to suffer from losing Chris Cuthbert. And I have actually already tweeted it. I wonder. I really wonder if TSN doesn't go to Sportsnet and go, "Hey, listen, Chris Cuthbert isn't doing anything in the summer because hockey's over. Can you share him with us so that he can still do
good
some
luck with
CFL
that
games?"
one. Good luck with that one. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying it might not fly.
I know.
Being who they are. Yeah, no, it's definitely the Canadian Football League needs to have these tough conversations with their partners, right? Because essentially one of the biggest problems with the Canadian Football League is the partnership, because of the different business plans that each team has. There isn't this commonality that's easy to arrive at, right? Because they're all starting in a different place, and now you want them all to be on the same page, but they're all reading different books. They're in a, you can't compare the ownership style of MLSC with the ownership style of Saskatchewan, can you? They have,
and Bob Young, to bring him up again, is so individualized in his style of ownership, right? That you've almost never seen it in any sport franchise at all, the way Bob Young carries himself around the Ticats. And so, yeah, each team's all individualized with their financial situation and whatnot. And so, I mean, and so are other teams in other leagues, right? I mean, New York Rangers and the Toronto Maple Leafs are in a much different financial situation than the Arizona Coyotes and the Florida Panthers. But you need to have a commonality, or maybe you go the other way and make stuff a bit more regional.
Well, that's just it. The regional aspect that you're talking about, it already is, like, they already are regional in their way of thinking and their broadcasting, right? I don't think there's another league that leans on territory as much as the Canadian Football League does. Some teams milk the territory far better than others, right? Because you look at Hamilton, and Hamilton's fan base, isn't just in Hamilton, right? They do, Kitchener, other places like that. Not that Kitchener doesn't have Argo fans, because I know some people in Kitchener, they'd be mad at me if they heard this. But the point being that it's about selling the game. And what do you do to sell the game? What makes the game, sales pitch easier? I firmly believe, more than anything, that perception is everything. That's why I think it almost wouldn't even matter what Sportsnet brought to the table with TSN if they got involved in the CFL. I think just the fact their simple presence would enhance the desire for people to watch the Canadian Football League, because we know, you and I both know, we've seen specific insults that the Canadian Football League has put up with. MLSC does a poster with all their teams. One problem: the Argos aren't on that. They're not in that picture, right? So that kind of stuff. Now, is that MLSC insulting the Argos? I don't know that that's the case. I just think that sometimes the Toronto Argonauts don't get the respect they deserve because they're not on everybody's A-list of concerns. So, everything we've talked about in this hour, which we're, coming close to the end of, has been about making, the CFL number one. How do we get it out from that bottom feeding territory where they're everybody's afterthought and or last thought? How do we get them to be one of the first thoughts or the first thought? That's the challenge, the Canadian Football League. If I can go back around in circles and then, put it a different way, that's what they have to do. They have to figure out how to be the first thought. They have to figure out how the people who talk about things in the world, the internet being at the top, that people bring up what's going on in the Canadian Football League. You hit on a very important thing that I think has to happen, and that is, just practice alone what the Leafs get in information being transferred because of something special that happens at practice. And I've been to Argo practices. I've been to other practices, Saskatchewan and some other teams, and some interesting stuff happens at practice. And I think that's the kind of stuff that if it's broadcast, I think it would be interesting. And I don't mean broadcast on TSN. I mean internet wise. If the people with the thumbs were more interested in the Canadian Football League, that would be real helpful.
Yeah. Now, oh, there we go. I was going to say, I didn't want to distract you, Frank, but you had frozen there. I was just going to mention.
Oh,
to
okay.
you, but your audio was fine though, so we got everything from you.
Okay,
But,
perfect.
Yeah, the whole thing about just getting the league out there and everything, and I mean that there was, I don't know if it was the same graphic or not that we're referring to, but it was TSN as well that put out a graphic of, was it celebrating, I think it was what, 10 or 15 years of TSN
Yes,
1050,
yes.
right? And it was the Leafs, Raptors, Jays, and then Tom Brady, and everybody went, huh? Tom Brady? Why the hell's Tom Brady on here when you don't have the Argonauts? So, just simple things like that have to be cleaned up. And then on top of that, I would just really like to see the league as a whole. I don't know. I don't want to repeat myself, but just push themselves better, because it's just not, it's not adequate right now for visibility. Yes, they tweet all the time. Their Twitter account is very active, and I appreciate that. I have them on notifications whenever they tweet or retweet something. But the final thing that I think they need to do is they need to sell their stars more. I've talked about it with the NHL as well, needs to sell their stars more and everything like that. They need to sell their stars and their personalities more. Say what you want about Simone Lawrence as a player. He is a personality and a half, both on and off the field. And he has a very active social media that I follow. So you need to take advantage of that as a league and go, all right, people are gravitating towards Simone Lawrence. Why? What can we do to help promote the entire league based on what a guy like Simone Lawrence is doing? You need to sell guys like Bo Levi Mitchell, who's a top talent in the league. Sell guys like, I know I keep going to Ticats, but Brandon Banks is another top end talent and is a sellable commodity. Brad Sinopoli is a sellable commodity because he's Canadian as well, right? You got to look at the American stars, the international stars, and the Canadian stars, pool them all together and figure out how you can promote the league with those guys, right? I've talked about for years how the NHL needs to utilize better guys like Crosby, McDavid, Matthews, because they're the superstars, but also in the NHL, the guys that have personality, guys like PK Subban, the guys that bring something interesting to the league. Because no offense to Connor McDavid, but sometimes he's about as interesting as unused drywall. He scored his 100th point, and he's basically just talking about how he just wants to get to the playoffs, which is fair, and that may be how he feels, but his personality is just not very marketable. So for the CFL, a guy like Simone Lawrence, a guy like Brad Sinopoli, other guys, I mean, I think Mike Riley's a marketable guy as well, and Bo Levi Mitchell, especially because a guy like Bo Levi is going to appeal to all, the country Westerners out there, So if you carry on and look at all these players and figure out how you can pool that together into something interesting, then I think that's another one. I know you. I know you've been
I have
working on getting back to us,
that's
Frank.
okay. I have camera issues,
That's
but my audio's working fine. So if I can impose upon you guys to let you know that I don't have a camera right now, my camera has gone kaput. But I am here audio wise, so I apologize for the technical difficulty that I seem to be a part of here.
That's okay, Frank. It happens.
Yeah, I was always here. I just wasn't here camera wise. So you're
Yeah.
right. My audio was fine, and then when you said that, that's when I started paying attention to my camera. But anyway, we're heading down to the. Sorry for putting you in the awkward position of having to talk when you didn't know you were going to. So you did a great job. Way to be the duck's feet under the water.
That's okay. I think I had a good point to make about
And I heard the
selling
whole
stars
thing.
anyway.
I heard the
So
whole thing because the only thing I did was I turned off my camera and turned it on again. Anyway, it'll probably come back, but I don't know if it'll come back very soon.
that's
Yeah,
okay.
so that's okay. So to conclude, we've only got a couple of minutes left. I think it's important for all of us to understand that the Canadian Football League is an organization that, that isn't a charity, and unfortunately, by virtue of how it operates, they can't. There really isn't. The toughest part for the Canadian Football League that people need to understand is there's not much of a war chest. They literally live from day to day, hand to mouth. You've got guys like you talk about Bob. Bob Young isn't there to make money. He basically spends what the fans give him, if I can put it that way. So, when he doesn't have a season, it hurts him because of that, because he doesn't have a reserve. In Saskatchewan, they have to spend the money because they're a public company. They're not a business. They can't have any money left over. Same thing with Edmonton. Edmonton cannot have money left over. They have to spend their money, and they spend it on minor league football, helping Aboriginal people come to the games. All these things that the Canadian Football League has as challenges are not like other sports and other leagues.
Yeah, and it all has to be managed, right? So, and most owners of CFL teams know that they're not going to make money off these teams. Bob Young basically saved the Hamilton Tiger Cats from folding and or relocating when he first bought them because they were not making any money at all. So it all needs to be. There he is. He's back right at the end. Yeah, it all needs to be managed. And that's where I come back to my other point about the CFL needs to look at the league financial situation and really rework it so that it's more stable. And if this were to happen again, where they could run in a bubble and it be a viable option.
Yeah, and viability is not something that comes easy, right? You do have to make sure that you all agree, and that's the other challenge that the Canadian Football League has. They can't all agree, and this isn't a matter of blame. I'm not blaming anyone that they have to be like that. It is just the reality of the Canadian Football League. They do not have a war chest. They don't earn a lot of money when they do, and they don't have enough money left over. Like, they're really hurting after what happened with them not getting their season. A lot of teams lost a lot of money that, honestly, I don't think they'll ever get back, Jared.
No, probably not.
And so, being the Canadian Football League offers its special set of challenges, and those challenges are really difficult. Well, I'd like to take the last minute to say thank you again for being on the program. I appreciate your help here and your ability to be on. We look forward to having you on again. The fact that David's being challenged by COVID-19 isn't the reason you're here. You're here because I like to have you here, and it just was, it was just something. Sadly, David couldn't be here with us for the three of us to be here together. We've done that quite a bit in the past, and it was always nice to do, and I was looking forward to doing that again, and I hope we will in the near future.
Yeah, and we wish David and his family and friends all good health and speedy recovery.
Yep. quite the challenge. So he's Jared Bapty. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. This, of course, has been CFL Talk. Thank you for watching. Of course, we're seen live on Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thank you for watching. Until next time.